see where everyone's joining us from, but let's go ahead and get started. So thank you again for joining, and welcome everyone. My name is Liz. I'm the Customer Engagement Coordinator here at Wodify. I'm very excited to have best hour of their days, Pat Barber, with me today to help teach you all comprehensive framework designed to not only enhance your coaching effectiveness, but to also ensure measurable, lasting progress for your clients. So just a few things before we dive in, just a few Zoom type things to note. If you look on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat, Q&A, and reactions tab. So for chat, I'm going to be throwing some things in there throughout this. Feel free to use that as a space to interact with us and the other owners on the webinar today. For Q&A, please submit questions in there throughout the webinar for Pat to answer. And then during Q&A, we'd love for you to use the raise hand feature. So in reactions, as pictured here, if you navigate to the reactions tab, click raise hand, that will let us know when you have a question or comment, and we can actually unmute you and you can talk to us live. Been to one of our webinars before, you know that we love unmuting you guys, hearing your voices. So please feel free to chime in if you have any questions at all. But with that, I will pass it to Pat to take the stage, introduce himself, and get started.
Brad. Liz, did you want me to wait till the end for questions, or do you want me to do those throughout as we go through?
Yeah, if it fits in, you can definitely do them throughout, but we'll probably have a dedicated section for a large amount of questions. But yeah, whatever you prefer.
Great. All right. Well, let's do it. It's always interesting presenting with just staring at my own face. If you've never presented on a digital platform, I love seeing all your names on the right-hand side there, and I know you're there. But let me introduce myself. My name is Pat Barber. If you don't know me, I've been in the CrossFit space for about 20 years now. Actually, yeah, 21 years. It's been a long time. I started CrossFit back at 2004 at the original gym, and I was just some 18-year-old kid. And since then, it's just been nonstop growth. It's been a super fun experience. I've worked in every area of CrossFit, from filming and editing video for the company and kind of just spending time around the main space and doing it, to competing CrossFit, to traveling around the world and teaching level 1s and level 2s, which I still do, to running gyms, to working for equipment companies, and kind of everything in between. And I would say the last about 13 years, my main focus has been developing coaches. And I kind of fell into this because I was working with an organization that had a wide, like a lot of coaches in a very small area. And the goal was to create some sort of harmony across those coaches and make them better. And so I've had how to develop coaches on my mind for years and years and years now. Recently, I started working for, about a year ago, actually, I started working for Best Hour of Their Day. And if you don't know who Best Hour of Their Day is, I highly recommend checking them out. I'll tell you what I do for them, but they are an affiliate mentorship company that does so much so well for affiliates. And if you've never seen their stuff, they've got a great podcast. But beyond that, like, I didn't even really know what they did until I went behind the scenes and they were like, hey, let me show you how we work with affiliates. And I was absolutely blown away. I've never seen people do things as right as they do and have as much success as they do. So if you're into that stuff, that business side of things, they're my absolute favorite in the space at that, hence the reason I'm working for them. I myself got brought on board to run a coaching development platform for them. Specifically, it's called The Knowledge. I got the t-shirt on because I can. And The Knowledge is a coaching development platform centered around increasing education. And today we are going to talk about coaching development. And the reason it's so important to talk about coaching development for me is essentially the front side of any gym is the coaching. So when you've got a small micro gym, you've got two sides, and the front side and the product is the coaching, and then the back side is all the business operations. And depending on the type of gym that you run, oftentimes it's going to be like a split between evenly amongst things like you've got your business operations, you got your sales, you got your marketing, you got your front end and behind end operations, then you've got your actual coaching. And that's usually an even split across those. If you are in the CrossFit space or the space that we're in, the front end of coaching is actually not an even split in that. It's more of like a 50-50 split. 50% is your front end coaching. And then the other 50%, when you're talking marketing, operations, and sales, that's all split evenly amongst the other 50%. So we put a high premium on that front end of coaching. which is why they brought me on board to help out with all of that. Now, my actual thing that I do for them is something, like I said, called the Knowledge. And the Knowledge is separate from Affiliate University, which is their gym mentorship, which has coaching development in it. It's a platform where we have kind of two different iterations of coaching development. One is going to be a more passive learning experience where it's essentially YouTube, but it's just coaching development content. So Monday through Friday, we drop a brand new video every day. We've already got like 250 videos in the system, and then there's a new one every day. And it's everything from just like coaching cues and tips and tricks to coaching theory to full live classes that we examine and unpack, and just kind of everything in between. That's the Knowledge. And then we have the Knowledge Pro, which is more of like a mentorship. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's a mentorship where we hand walk people through continued development. Now, that's what I currently do. But I'd like in this conversation to talk about my larger theory on coaching and coaching development. And it's more of just the framework that I view the bigger picture of developing as a coach. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm not going to say that I have the one and only method for doing it, but this is just a good way to wrap your head around continuing to develop. And at the end, I'll talk about kind of three different types of coaches: beginners, intermediates, and advanced coaches, and where they can kind of apply this structure to improving their own coaching. Now, first off, I have to give you a definition of coaching because it's hard to talk about what that is. And for me, I define coaching as creating positive change. I think in the space right now, there's a lot of people who consider themselves coaches, but they don't actually have um, they don't have the mindset of going in and creating change. They just more of like presenters where they get in and they just kind of say words and they hope that it's taken on board. But for me, the act of coaching actually involves an interaction that's individualized with the individual, with the single person in front of you. And in order for it to be called coaching, you have to create positive change. Um, and in the case of good coaches, they create positive change faster and across more types of people. So the goal with any end state of my coaching development is that you're able to create positive change in the people who are in front of you faster across more numbers of people. That's coaching, and good coaches do that really, really well. So that's whenever I reference coaching or good coaches, that's what I'm really referencing there, is creating positive change. Now, this little acronym that I made, CARE, I actually made it years ago. And the reason I used it, and it's kind of nerdy and kind of corny, is just because like step one, you got to care genuinely. Like you have to care. And specifically, you have to care about people. This is the type of industry that if you don't care about people, like don't be in it. Join another industry. You'll go be like an accountant or a banker or something like that. I'm not saying that those people don't care about people, but this industry is about caring about the individual who's in front of you and about wanting the best for them with regards to, every action that they take in life. So step one, you have to care. And if that's not there, then there's no point in really having a continued conversation of how to develop as a coach. So the reason I call it CARE is for that as the first piece. But I also have a little acronym within that, and then we'll unpack each piece. And it's not particularly linear. You don't need to do the C first and the A and the R and then the E, but each one will kind of contribute to each other to help develop ourselves as coaches. So the acronym CARE stands for consume. A and R is analyze and reflect. And then E is execute. So we've got consume, analysis and reflection, and execution. So it's consume is learning, analysis and reflection is thinking, and then execution is doing. So learn stuff, think about stuff, do stuff. Oh, look at Liz is tossing little things in the thing for me. Thanks, Liz. Thanks for the smiley face too. And let's unpack each one of those and how we do each one of those and kind of how they interact with each other. And I'm going to start with consume because it's the first one. Consume is how we take on board new information. And when you are moving through the world as a coach, you have a lens or a paradigm, and that's how you view any given situation. And that lens and that paradigm is shaped by the education that you have, the things that you've learned, and the experiences that you've had. So that lens should be ever shifting, but it should be something that you're looking through and examining any given scenario with. So whether it's an individual interaction with a person or a class situation or a program or whatever it is, that paradigm is shaped by what you know and what you've experienced. So in the case of a coach, we have our coaching paradigm. And the goal with that is to expand that as wide as possible, to know as many things as possible, to really set the foundation to build context around any given situation in the easiest way. So we have to be consuming new information. It's part of the reason I developed the knowledge is it's a very succinct bit of information that's easy to take on board every day. Now, within that, there's two different kinds of knowledge, or not knowledge, but types of education that you can consume really. We have what I call static information that just kind of stays there. And essentially, I'll go over it in a sec, but that's other people's info that they're giving to you, something like my platform called The Knowledge. Or there's dynamic, and dynamic is your understanding of that laid over it. So let's first talk about static. Static information is something like a video or a podcast or a book or even a course you can take online. It's information that's other people's stuff that they've learned, they've studied, they've, you know, dug into and embodied on their own, and they're putting it forward and they're saying, hey, this is how it happens. This is how a scenario looks. This is where a knee goes in a squat. This is what the core does while it's bracing. All of that information that they've understood, they're putting down in some sort of medium that you can absorb, and they're giving it to you in a way that you can take it on board. So that's static information, and it gives you a base, it gives you a foundation, and it's something you should be exposing yourself to constantly, no matter what level coach you're at. A suggestion there is to figure out the medium that you learn best in as a coach and pursue that avenue a lot. I know for myself, I don't read particularly good. I can read just fine, but I don't take any of the information in. So reading is very difficult for me. So YouTube is really good for me. Podcasts and listening are really good for me. So I expose myself to more of that and then challenge myself via reading as well. But if you know what type of learning that you do best, try to spend most of your time doing that one so you can take the most amount of information on board. But that's static information, and that's well and dandy and awesome. But I would say almost more important to that, than that would be something that I call dynamic information. And dynamic information is that static information put into practice and then watching the result of it. And that requires time and effort and paying attention on your part, which we will get into the analysis and reflection in just a second. So it's taking that static information and using it in real life and seeing how it plays out. And the only way to get better at that is not to necessarily read more books, but to do more, to go out and execute and put the time into the hours of coaching and pay attention to those results. And I think those two things are pretty married when we talk about static and dynamic information. But I see a lot of people spend a lot of time educating themselves, but then not going out and seeing how that actually works in real life. So if we truly want to develop, we want to get better, we have to put the stuff into practice and pay attention to the results and let that shape our dynamic understanding of any given situation based off of the static information that we have. So when it comes to consuming, we have to do two parts. One is find information that already exists there and then take it on board as much as possible. And then two, go out and use it and pay attention to the results and see how that's actually working. And that's our dynamic understanding. And I think that more plays into a wisdom sort of deal. And that will take time, and that will take effort, and that will take, a close examination of what's going on. But when it comes to consuming, the main thing that we have to have is curiosity. Being really curious about why things are happening, what's happening, who's saying the information, like as deep as we can go in all of that will be better for us. So if you want to be better at consuming, be really curious. If you stick your stake in the sand of like, this is how it is, it's hard to continue to grow and learn because you kind of lose some of that curiosity because you 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 kind of put up your fences of being like, I've got the information, I'm not moving on. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the different types of coaches as we move on from there. So that's consume. So analysis and reflection, the next little bit, this is kind of helps within that dynamic information or that dynamic consuming that we talked about. And analysis and reflection allow us to build context around anything that's happening. It's essentially looking at a situation or looking at information or looking at any given scenario and being like, okay, what's going on here? And based off of my education, maybe why is this happening? And then within that, you're taking more information on board. You're analyzing what's going on, and then you're reflecting based off of what you currently know, and you're putting some context around it. And this happens on the front end every time we, take on a new bit of information. Hey, a new study came out that says XYZ. Great. How does that fit with what I already know? Let me examine this closer. How is this all done? Does this make sense? How can I then put it into practice? So the more we know, the easier it is to analyze and reflect and put context around things. But it also happens on the back end after we've done something. So after we've executed, after we've put into play information, we have to then go, okay, how well did that work? How is that then going to shape my overall wisdom, my overall dynamic understanding of things? So this process of analysis and reflection, it really requires self-awareness and openness. And these are not traits that are super easy for some of us because it requires being quite honest with yourself. And when we get into, again, the intermediate and more advanced coaching, I'll say where you should really put that effort. But self-awareness requires you being able to step back and look at how you're impacting scenarios, which at times, if you've ever done it, can be painful. But is very essential for us to continue to grow. And that goes with everything from, basic human interactions to, advanced coaching cues to basic coaching cues. If you don't have the ability to say, hey, push your knee out, and then look to see if they push their knee out, and then see if that was the most effective way to make it happen, then you're never going to improve. You're never going to continue to move forward. You're just going to be saying the words and not reflecting and analyzing and seeing if things actually worked the way you wanted them to. So analysis and reflection require self-awareness and openness. A willingness to be wrong is something we should all have. We should think that we're right, but be open to being wrong and finding something that actually works a little bit better. And that becomes easier the further along you are in this and the more information you expose yourself to, because there's going to be many different sides to any given scenario. So that's analysis and reflection. And then lastly, we have execution. Execution is about doing stuff. We can think about stuff as much as we want, but we have to put it all into practice. And so once we've learned stuff, once we've fit where that fits in our head with analysis and reflection, we have to go out and then execute. We have to do. And I find a lot of people who want to develop, they spend a lot of time in bringing more information on board, but not enough time doing. And depending on what level you are at as a coach, you're going to want to do more doing, or you're going to want to do more, focus doing, or you're going to want to do things in different areas. But we do have to go out and execute and actually put the rubber to the road and do the coaching. Getting hours under our belt really, really changes our overall dynamic understanding of any given scenario. So don't just think about the stuff. You got to do this stuff. So learn something new, like, hey, here's a cue, and then go out and try it. And then based off of how well that works, you then examine the scenario and go, okay, I'm going to store that cue here for this type of person, and that works super well. Or it doesn't work with this type of person. I wonder why. Let's unpack that a little bit more. So go out and do. And in order to execute well, it requires confidence. And you don't have to have like confidence like you're right, but you have to have the confidence to go out and have interactions with people and be willing to just have stuff happen. Like go out and try a thing and be like, I wonder how this works. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you own it and kind of move on. But make sure you have confidence when you're going out to execute. So again, we've got consume, analysis and reflection, and execution. Consume, you need to be curious. You got static and dynamic. Analysis reflection requires self-awareness and openness. execution, do stuff, and have confidence in what you're doing there. So that framework of care is happening constantly over the development of coaches. And depending on where you're at, really what level that you're at, I think you should have a slightly different focus of how much effort you put into each one of these areas. So I'll start first and just talk about 3 different types of coaches. And I'll start first again with beginner coaches. And beginner coaches, I'm going to define as people who are in the kind of like 1 to 3 years-ish range, or 0 to 3 years. And they're pretty new to it. They don't have much on the floor experience. And they're just like, hey, I want to get better at this process. And the prioritization across consume, analysis, and reflection execution, in my mind, should be centered around consume and execution, and put a back seat on analysis and reflection. So when you're really new, there's not much context that you can really analyze. And to layer on top the analysis of everything that you're doing can make you a neurotic mess. In addition to that, you don't have much context for it. So it's very hard to take much away. Now, should you still do it? For sure. But as a beginner, the main thing you need to do is expose yourself to as many possible pieces of information as you can. Like literally every piece of the spectrum, you should be watching and learning and reading and just doing everything you can to take on new information. And then the second half of that would be going out and using said information. So you take stuff on board, use stuff, take stuff, use stuff, take stuff, use stuff constantly. That should be your job as a beginner coach. And then maybe once a week or once a month, sit back and look at your week and be like, okay, what felt good? What worked well? And you can journal about it. You can think about it. Depending on how detailed you are, you can write little spreadsheets about it. But it shouldn't be an everyday process or even an every moment process of analysis and reflection as a beginner. It's far more about getting reps under your belt there and getting exposed to as much information as possible. So if you're a beginner, prioritize consuming and executing above all else. Now, let's talk about individuals, or not individuals, intermediate coaches. And I think within intermediate coaches, there's 2 distinct types of intermediate coaches. These are people who've spent some time coaching. They've been on the floor a bit. They've gotten kind of comfortable with the things that they're doing, and they know some things that work, and they know some things that don't work, and they've kind of developed a little bit of a style. And I think that there's 2 different types of people who get here. There's one who becomes complacent and just kind of keeps doing what they know works. And then there's one who gets so into new stuff that all they ever do is research new stuff and bring it back and do it. And I think both of those people need focus in kind of an analysis and reflection area, but they need a slightly different thing to continue to develop. So with the coach who's going out and seeking more information and constantly bringing it back, I think in the intermediate stages, we run the risk of thinking we've figured it out. I know a lot of people out there who are relatively new to coaching who will speak about things like they've got the answer. And they they'll go out and they'll see some really cool Kelly Starrett video and they'll be like, everybody's wrong here. Let's go do this. And their whole life, like their whole coaching for the next 2 weeks is centered around that one thing, which is cool. Like I love that passion, but it kind of starts to discount other stuff that they've done. And it's not looking at the bigger context of, is this actually doing what I want? So with those coaches, when it comes to where you prioritize your development, I really want you to put your focus on the analysis and reflection and the analysis and reflection of what you're doing. So it's like every time that you find something new and awesome, you bring it in, you use it, you immediately have to look and be like, is this doing what I want it to do? So we have to first define that, which is, what am I trying to do with this? And then I go, is this doing that? And if it is, cool, take it on board, learn from it, see where it's applicable, and then find the new thing and keep doing that over and over again. So the intermediate coach is already seeking that outside stuff and bringing it in and just like getting really, aggressive with their own education, that's awesome. But really be focusing on the analysis and reflection of whether or not those things are working. Is it doing what you want it to do? Is it something that assists the overall bigger picture of, in the case of the gyms I work with, getting people more fit, not just making them more mobile, not just making them stronger, not just making them better at gymnastics, but is it making them more fit overall? And be constantly paying attention and analyzing and reflecting on that. So put the focus there. Now, with the coach who becomes complacent, who's like intermediate, but they've found some stuff that works and they just kind of rely on that, oftentimes I find that that coach hasn't been challenged in a while. They might be the best coach at their facility, and they're not the type of person who naturally goes out and seeks more information. So I think there's two things that that person can do. One is find a really easy way to be exposed to new information. Specifically, I like the knowledge, but you can go on YouTube, you can do it anywhere else, but that can just drip feed information to you that you can try like one new thing a week or one new thing at a time. So that way you're not constantly feeling like you need to seek new stuff, but you're just trying like one thing. And you're like, hey, I'm going to try this cue this week, see how it works. I'm going to try this patterning for running a class, or this drill for a 2-1-2 of two cues, two static cues, one dynamic look, and then two more static cues every single rep. Try one piece of development like per week, and find a place that can kind of just drip feed that information to you. So that way you're not overwhelmed with trying to learn new stuff, because maybe that's not how you want to do it right now. That's not what life's asking of you. The other thing I think you could do if you are in that place is challenge yourself. And challenge yourself by finding somebody who's better than you and watching them do the job, which is not super easy because we're all in our own little bubbles within our spaces. But I think finding a mentor or a mentorship group of people who are trying to elevate their own capacity is huge. If you are the type of coach who like, I've kind of figured stuff out, works pretty well, I'm good with what I'm doing, put yourself in a situation where you can have people naturally push you, naturally be like, okay, well, I heard that. That sounds cool. I'm going to give that a shot. So find a way to challenge yourself in some sort of mentorship group, or even find a specific mentor, some coach who you can sign up with and be like, I want to follow what you do. Let's pay attention to this kind of stuff. Cool. That's intermediate coaches. And that where I want them to prioritize again is that analysis and reflection, and then making sure that you challenge yourself if you're somebody who is stagnant in your overall growth. Experienced coaches. What an experienced coach is to me is a coach who's got all the basics covered when it comes to what they know, how well they can like analyze and reflect on any given piece of information that they get, and how they execute has become second nature. They don't need to think about any of it. They don't really need to prioritize one of those areas. And I'm sure there's plenty of you on this call who are experienced coaches who is like, you can get a group of people moving pretty easy. And you're just like, you know what? Here we go. I can step into any given room, whether it's my clients or new clients or whatever it is, and I can get them moving pretty good, pretty quick with not much of an issue. I naturally kind of develop. Life is good. That's my idea of an experienced coach. Now, once you get there, I think this is where it gets really fun, because now what you get to do is you get to take this process of learning stuff, analyzing, and executing out of the realm of fitness, out of the realm of coaching, and turn it into the realm of just like the human experience. How can you individually apply unique interactions to every human that walks through the door to give them exactly what they need? And I'm not talking about necessarily exactly the right, program or exactly that nutrition thing. Like, yes, that, but more, what words do you need to say to have the greatest impact the quickest on those people? So you take this same process of learning new stuff and analyzing, reflecting, and executing, and you move it to like, how can you communicate to humans the most effectively? Like, you should start diving into the worlds of psychology and therapy and self-help and all of the things to where you can see if you can have a greater impact quicker and start to impact their lives through the lens of fitness, through go a little deeper, push your knees out, lift your chest up, through those kinds of things. Can you make the rest of their lives better? And it's wild to see when you have the basics covered, how you can sit on top of that all, continue to develop, and then start to make it uniquely profound for each individual. And it's a big ask, but it's super possible. And once you get there, it's a never ending game. It's a never ending game of like, how efficiently can I do this? And can I, through this medium of fitness, elevate this person's entire life? And it becomes really fun. So if you're there, I stoked for you on that. That's awesome. Now it's time to elevate the game and see if you can really focus on, can you do it the best for everybody who walks through the door and start to elevate their life outside the gym, which is kind of fun. Anywho, essentially, we got to care first and foremost about people. Consume, analysis, and reflection, and execution are my general framework. And you need to put specific focus on different areas depending on what level of coach that you're at. Essentially, though, you got to learn, you got to think, and you got to do. And you got to do that over and over again. And this, again, is a much higher view of it than the nitty gritty on every little piece that you do there. If you want the specifics, there's many different programs out there that offer it. I think a lot of the CrossFit seminars are fantastic, as well as things outside the CrossFit space, but continued education is absolutely essential to all of this. And if you want to find me, I'm over at The Knowledge with Best Hour of Their Day, and you can access me there. We have The Knowledge, which is the $37 a month drip fed information one. Then we have The Knowledge Pro, which is $99 a month, and it's a small mentorship, 2 calls a week, good fun stuff. That's all I got. I'd love to answer questions if they exist. If not, I'll just assume that I answered them all with my presentation.
We definitely have some questions that exist for you. So we actually just have a call out from JC first off that she says, no questions. We just wanted to say hi to Pat and to thank him for an awesome L2 experience a couple of months ago in San Diego.
Oh, hey, JC. Yeah, that was a fun one. It was extra cold in San Diego. I don't know what that was all about, JC, but next time make San Diego warmer, but the people were fantastic.
Love that. Okay, from Sean, how do we access the knowledge on YouTube? Sorry, I missed this bit.
Oh, Sean, we post some of the videos on YouTube as well as some of them on Instagram for the Best Hour of Their Day account. If you want to check out the actual knowledge, we're going to give you, all the people who are on here, a free month of it. If you want to get the code in the end, I think Liz, you're going to send out a little free code, but that's at besthouroftheday.com/the knowledge. And you find it there, but we'll send you those links if you want to check it out there. On YouTube, they're just kind of drop periodically older videos in the knowledge because we have it all in its daily information that is every single day that gets posted. But yeah.
Okay, sweet. So we have quite a few more in the Q&A tab. So from Lynette, I think you mentioned a 50% split between coaching and business operations. So are you referring, when you say that, to time, money, or resources?
It's more like time and resources. When we look to examine the businesses, so the way that Affiliate University does their business mentorship is they essentially set up this kind of analysis of your overall business, and you've got these different categories and areas that you can focus on, and you do a big test, and it ranks you in each one of those areas on sickness, wellness, fitness continuum, how good they are relative to the rest of your business or relative to businesses that are doing well. And then you do 6-week sprints on the areas that need work. But when we're talking about that split, it's 50% of your business in our minds when we talk about running micro gyms like this is the front end, is the coaching and the product that you offer, which is different than other gym businesses. The other 50% is the, sales, marketing, operations, all of the other stuff that runs the business. Should both resources and time and effort should be should be split evenly across the other 50%, whereas the 50% of your effort and of your business should be focused on that coaching and that product that you're offering. But yeah,
Yeah.
it gets way more detailed and specific with the best hour stuff. They're really good at it, and it's cool. I don't do that side of it. I focus on the coaching side because I'm like, damn, you guys are wizards over here.
Okay, from I think it's Deanna or Diana. What about a coach that won't change things up in conversations? They say they will, but then just keeps going back to the same stuff. I own Emerge CrossFit, so I'm just curious how to handle that.
Yeah, I think with any individual thing that's going wrong, I couldn't say exactly why this coach is doing that, but I think being able to communicate with that person and see like that exact thing that you said, hey, you keep saying you're going to change, but you're not. Like that open line of communication it's going to be a different answer from person to person. I think there's certain types of coaches who they don't know that they're not changing. Or maybe when they go to change, they're focusing on too many different things. So they're like, okay, I need to change all these different areas. So they focus on too many things and they don't actually change. So it might be with that person, they need one thing to focus on at a time. Like, hey, I need you to say hi to everyone who walks in the door for a week. And they're like, oh, okay, I can do that. And then they go to do it. There's also kind of disgruntled turds out there, for lack of a better way of saying it, that you need to get to the bottom of maybe why they are a disgruntled turd. And that might be a personal conversation. And I wouldn't lead it off by being like, hey, why are you such a disgruntled turd? But I would say like, hey, what's going on in life? What's like, and express very openly and clearly like the standard that we're looking for is this. And for some reason, when we go to develop, like you're not changing from this. Um, Now, I don't know exactly the type of coach you're talking about or what's going on with it, but I do know that when it comes to the different sides of coaching, you kind of have the mechanics of coaching, which is the education and push your knees out, go deeper, that kind of stuff. And then you also have the human side of it, which is empathy and the ability to connect with people and to sense a room. And what I've found is this side is much easier to get people to change than this side. So when you're talking about teaching people the mechanics of go a little deeper, push your knees out, lift your chest up, that's easy to tangibly take on board. But it's a little bit more nebulous when I'm saying like, hey, be a better person. you know? So it might be a bigger task than you think to change how someone acts in a facility because that's like an ingrained part of their being. So they might need some really, some different types of tools. Like when it comes to empathy, I have a tool that I use with people called the Ford method, which is you go around the group and you talk to people about family, education, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So it takes it out of the realm of I'm just talking to people about coaching and being like, I'm going to try to connect with individuals. So you can use that as a tool for people who maybe when you're asking them to change, it's with their ability to interact with humans. But understand that that's what they've done their entire lives. And that's going to be, however they've done it, it's going to be a hard thing to fundamentally change. So depending on what you're looking to change, the reason might be different. So that's a lot of answers for a single question, but I apologize. It wasn't as straightforward.
No, such great info there. Okay, so from Jean, kind of a long-winded question, but they said, I'm personally longing for some kind of organized program that allows coaches to guest coach at other affiliates, effectively trading coaches back and forth in an effort to collectively improve their coaching staff by facilitating getting them outside of the routine and comfort zone. Requires a considerable amount of trust between owners and respect for the uniqueness of their business ops. Jean's been lucky enough to be hired to guest coach at a couple of gyms. Unique circumstances led to such opportunities, and they found it invaluable. And fortunately, the affiliate owners got great feedback from their members. So what are your
Yeah.
thoughts there?
So I love where your mind's at, Gene, because that's huge. Like the what we find, I mean, that's huge for two reasons. One, like what you have in your gym as the example will be what you aspire to do, right? So when you're coming up in a gym, the best coach at your gym is the example of what you're going to do. So what we find is a lot of gyms don't have a particularly great coach. So all the other coaches under them are, unless they're uniquely ambitious, are not seeing an example of what's awesome. And when I was developing coaches across this organization that we had, like 22 gyms and 80 coaches in the same place, the best thing I could do for a gym, if I wanted to develop the coaches, was take a pre-existing great coach and plop them as the head coach of the gym. And that had more development than spending all the effort and all the time and all the areas. It was just giving that example. So what you're saying is like going to other gyms, watching other coaches, and then beyond that, also coaching other athletes who don't know you. That elevates the skills huge, because you might think you're awesome in your home gym because you've built this rapport, and then try to step into the 6 a.m. class at a neighboring gym of people who have no idea who you are, and you're expected to make it work. That'll really test your skills. So what you're saying is you've done that a few times. That's awesome. What I'll say is that we do that within Best Hour, which has been awesome. There's plenty of affiliates who are on the Best Hour program who swap coaches just for exactly what you're saying there. Even within the Knowledge Pro, which is outside the Best Hour affiliate ecosystem, we've got a bunch of coaches who will go guest coach. We just had a big group of them. They all went to Hawaii and coached at this gym in Hawaii. And those coaches in Hawaii then came to, I think it was Oregon, and just coached there and like had the whole swap. And it was, and they just came back raving about it, how fun it was and how different the experience was. So it does exist. It's just, it's hard. Like you said, it takes trust and it takes care. And that's kind of what we're trying to build, is like, we want a community of coaches. Like, we're not, how many hundreds of thousands of millions of people need this information? There should be no animosity. There should be no, like, any given town that you're in, like, what you offer that's unique is you and your experience and your ability to deliver. So it shouldn't be a battle, but unfortunately we're in a day and age where it is in some places. And you get some turds in the punch bowl that ruin it.
Okay, thanks, Jean. We have another question from Lynette. So how can I help an intermediate coach get on board with my gym's unique belief in fitness?
Well, I think first and foremost, we'd have to know what your unique belief in fitness was. And that to me would be like a, when you're hiring sort of deal, you need to set the tone of like what we believe in. I know it's changed from place to place what we're actually pursuing. I believe very strongly in fitness being one specific thing. It was increase work capacity across broad time modal domains. And I keep coming back to that. And the way we get there is, personally for me, through CrossFit. So that belief structure is the overarching thing that I bring every coach on board with. If you're not on board with that, hey, later, like you can't be here because you have a different view of what it is. So I think that first and foremost, make sure it's really clear, and have the conversations and let them ask their questions and go back and forth and be like, okay, well, why do you believe what you believe? And see if you can work their brain around to understanding why and how you do it there, and see if you can come to a common ground. If you can't, honestly, I think it's a recipe for letting go of a coach. If someone doesn't buy into the ethos of your gym, they don't fit, they don't believe in what you're delivering, no matter how helpful they are of filling a space and coaching some hours, they're in the long run, they're going to be going against the grain when everything that you do. So for me, it's really important that they believe in at least a similar thing to you. And, they can voice a dissenting opinion or, hey, we could do it better. But in the end, you're the owner. You got to be the person, or maybe you're the owner, I don't know. But you got to like be the person who's like, these are the rules. Like, and that's easier if you do it on the front end. Here's my front end belief structure and values. Do you believe in this? Yes, let's sign on board. It's harder to do down the road, but it's essential if you want a properly functioning business.
Love that. Okay, so we have time for a few more. From Chris, we have, how many hours/classes a day would you recommend being a maximum amount?
How many classes a day? When you're newer, I think you should bang out more classes, because it's about reps. And I think that the max in in a day, I think the max is like 4. I know there's people who are like 8 a day, and I'm like, no, like buy those later classes. You're dying. I think 4 is the max that I would really have any coach do. When you get a little bit more experienced, I think 3 makes a little bit more sense. But that's just my personal opinion. I don't think there's a specific science to that. It's just I've seen people burn out with more than that in the later classes. And if you're doing 4, it shouldn't be 4 in a row. It should be like 2 break 2 sort of deal.
Cool. I think that's a good segue into this next question, which is from Mary Ruth. For those working toward a full-time coaching career, personally, she's in year 3 of coaching and personal training, but they're struggling to find consistent mentorship and identify a clear path forward. So what are some key steps that you would recommend for finding that mentorship and facilitating opportunities to level up?
I mean, it feels like you kind of laid that up for me to just say the knowledge. Like that, I both that one and Chelsea's question is like that's why we created this, is we didn't see many clear paths for this. The knowledge, the main one being just that's you don't have to search for it. The information's right there. It's just every day you're getting this new piece of content. The actual mentorship portion, the Knowledge Pro, that's we jump on 2 calls a week. You've got people who've all been there. You've got coaches who are going through the same thing. We do a community call and then an education call and really get into the nitty gritty. So I genuinely would recommend that. If I wouldn't recommend that, I'd be doing something different. I'd be running a different business and so that's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, and Chelsea's question was, for those of us who don't have a lot of access to other coaches to watch, are there good videos online of example coaching? So same.
Yeah, we post some of what we have inside the knowledge. I think Cody dropped the YouTube channel link there for the best hour. We post some of them in there. There's also the podcast you can listen to, which has a lot of that stuff. I'm going to do a coaching specific version of the podcast launching in July called Behind the Knowledge, which we're going to interview coaches and go that whole thing. But then beyond that, there's also our actual program, which is the knowledge, which you guys will get a month to, and you can check that all out.
Sweet. Okay. I think we have time for one more question from Jen. How important is the whiteboard aesthetic to you? I believe it sets the tone for class, should be fun, big writing, legible. I have an L3 coach who seems like he doesn't care. I've had to ask him repeatedly to write bigger, clearly, and write all the important info regarding the workout and stimulus on the board. Help, is what she said.
Oh, that's so fun. So Jen, I think you're talking about me, who happens to show up at your gym and have horrible handwriting. I actually have this book right here. Check it out. It's how I imagine my handwriting, what my handwriting really looks like. I've presented and done lectures. This is a tracing book like kids have, but it's for adults. I I think what's more personally, because I suck at writing, but what's more important is the actual experience at the board. Like, what are they saying? I highly recommend that people learn how to write better. One way to do that is if you write in all caps. If you force coaches to write in all caps, it makes the writing a bit more legible. I present on this information weekly, and it's rough. But I used to have coaches in previous classes write it for me, or if I had it the night before, I'd have them write it for the morning. If I knew one of those coaches had slightly better handwriting, while simultaneously working on it on my own. I definitely think you should improve, but as my, I had a test done when I was younger, and it said lacks fine motor skills. And I was like, cool, great. So I've worked on it a lot. It's gotten more legible, but I'm talking 20 years in the game, and it still sucks relative to probably what you do. So I think it's important, but less important than what the interaction feels like and how it's spoken, because they're going to forget what's on the board pretty soon.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I know I said we only had one question left, but we did have a brave soul raise their hand to be unmuted. So I'm gonna allow Alexander to talk. I just suggested you could unmute if you want to ask your question live to us. Alexander, you should be able to unmute.
Alvin, I see your thing there talking about the OCD coach who had super good handwriting. I had a coach who was an amazing artist who just loved drawing on the board. And every morning they would draw this big elaborate thing. He was a 5 a.m. coach. It was incredible. And people loved it. If you can find it, it's unbelievable. And they draw these cool little pictures all around. It definitely lifts up the gym, I would say. Alexander, I saw you come off mute for a
I'm
second.
sorry, I just click on the left hand, but I don't have questions.
Oh,
Oh,
no worries.
well, we
No
get to
worries.
see your beautiful voice then, or hear it.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, wait, we do have Lynette with a live question. So let's hear from Lynette really quick.
Maybe.
Maybe.
It could be another Alex situation.
Yeah, Lynette, I think you're off mute, but we can't hear you. Oh no. Maybe
All right.
mic issue.
I think Lynette's like totally got all her questions answered for sure.
She
Lynette,
said I'm trying.
you can always message me anytime. Pat@besthouroftheirday.com. Also, if you guys, I was asked by Ryan, one of our awesome dudes, if we get any of your information, if you want to shoot us a message, we can get you what it looks like in the Knowledge Pro. One of those calls you can watch through and see how we do some of that mentorship back and forth, and you can check that all out as well. So, in addition to the free month of the knowledge, just give me your information and I'll shoot you what that looks like as well.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry, Lynette. I wish we could hear from you, but overall, thanks everybody for those great questions. Like Pat mentioned, you can reach out to him if you have any more. But that's all we have today. So thank you so much to Pat for joining me. Thank you to all of you for attending and participating, engaging with us. Just a reminder, you can get a free month of the knowledge by using the code Wodify webinar in the sign up process. Don't worry, I'll email you all of these details. And as always, you'll get a recording of this webinar sent to your email as well. We also post all of these recordings on the Wodify YouTube channel. So highly encourage you to use this as a resource in your business. Maybe show it to some other coaches who weren't able to join today. But yeah, other than that, thanks for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thanks, everybody.